Hey, what's going on, guys? So I just wanted to give a quick little introduction. So this is pretty much the third video that I've uploaded about this mini series that I wanted to do. It's basically a full stack application. With the very end, we're going to be integrating with Stripe. So this part, we're going to be focusing on the actual React app. We're basically going to be creating two pages. One of the pages is going to be a login page. The other page is going to allow the users to enter their payment details. It's going to send all that data to Stripe, and then we're going to integrate our backend with the front end so that we can actually build out this whole full stack application. So I really hope you guys enjoy it. All right, so for the framework, I'm going to be using React, obviously. I'm just going to use create React app, so npx create React app, and I'll just simply call it Stripe front end. So this will take probably like 20 seconds or so. All right, so it's been created, and let's go ahead and cd into Stripe front end. Whoops, wrong directory. Okay, so I have Yarn installed on my computer, but if you don't have Yarn, you can just do npm start, and it'll work just fine. I'm gonna just do yarn start. All right, so our app should have been started up, and I'm gonna go ahead and just visit it on port 3000. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I think honestly, I'm not gonna worry too much about the design because I think you guys should focus on that yourself. I'm only gonna do the basic, so I'm just gonna create like simple components. We'll create the login button, show the redirection. But for the front end, we're going to need a couple of dependencies. We're going to need a React router DOM. So I'm going to install it with Yarn. You can use it with npm. So I'm just going to do yarn add. You would do npm install React router DOM. Okay, so this is just going to basically be for routing because we are going to have a couple of routes. And we're going to install Axios for HTTP requests. And I think that should be it. All right, so I'm going to just get rid of the CSS as well because I don't really need it. Let's get rid of the logo.svg. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just do import. And we're simply going to go ahead and import from React router DOM. And we're going to go ahead and do browser router as router. And we're going to set everything up right over here. Okay, so we're going to need to import our routes. So let's import a route. And we'll use a switch as well. So we're simply just going to go and do switch because we're going to have multiple different routes. And we're simply going to route different pages. So I'm going to create a new folder. I'll call this pages and components. So this is where I'm going to keep all my files. So for pages, I'll just do guest page or login page.jsx. Okay, we'll have more pages later. So we'll have more pages later. So I'm going to import, let's do React from React. Export const login page, and let's see, I will do return div login page. And what I'll do is I'm going to create a barrel file to hold all of my components. So basically, all a barrel file does is just exports all of your stuff, but from one file though. So it makes it look cleaner. So rather than importing it from so many different directories, you just import it from the same directory all the time. Okay, so we're gonna have the login page, and let's just route that real quick. So route, let's do path, and we'll do login, and let's do exact true. And the component will be login page. So when we visit /login, it's going to take us to the correct route. It's going to take us to the login route. So for example, what's going on here? All right, there we go, login page. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Hopefully it is. Okay, and we can also create another page for payments. So we'll do payment page.jsx. Yeah, I'll just honestly copy and paste all this, rename it to payment page. Okay, and we will export that payment page. And if I want to route that now, I can simply just do /payment page, and you can see that why is it going from here? It should be going from here. So now you can see that instead of importing it from different directories, we can just import it all from one file, which looks a lot better in my opinion. Okay. Okay, I think that's pretty much it for the 2 pages. We're not really going to have that many. So let's work on the login page. So for the login page, we're basically going to need to be responsible for redirecting the user to the backend, URL to authorize. So all I'm going to do is I'm just simply going to go ahead, and I'm really not going to bother trying to style much, but maybe I'll do it towards the end if we have time. Let's do a simple button, login with Discord. Okay. Doesn't do anything. But what we want to do is we want to register a onClick event. And when the user clicks, we're going to redirect them to the API route. So that's going to be localhost port 2001/API/auth/Discord. You can't use React Router to direct them to an external URL. At least not that I know of. I've tried Googling some solutions. They always mention to use window.location.ref or href. So we're going to do that. Yeah, that's fine. Let's log in with Discord. So now you can see if I click on here, it's going to direct us to this page, which is what we want. Okay, so that's going to be pretty much it for the login page. Like I said, it's pretty basic. It's just nothing crazy. All right, so now let's make sure that when we authorize, instead of redirecting it to the backend, because right now if you see, if we click authorize, it's going to take us to the API, the port 3000 route, and we don't want that. We want to actually direct them to the front end. Okay, so on the auth.js route, right over here, router.get/discord/redirect, we're just simply going to go ahead and do res.redirect, and we're going to redirect it to the absolute domain, so port 3000 right over here. I'm actually going to redirect them to payment instead of the login because they've already logged in already. Okay, and that should be just fine. So let's click login, authorize, and see we're at payment. So now if I open up the console and if I click on cookies, you can see that I have the cookie stored in the browser. And if I go to my database right over here, you can see that I have that cookie right over here. So K1_A57, you can see it's right over here, K1A57, and it goes all the way to the dot. The rest of the stuff I think is used for decrypting the cookie, I think. Okay, there we go. So we have the cookie. So now that we have the cookie, we can actually make requests to the API. And since we are logged in, we can make authorized requests. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's go right over to payment page. We only want users who are logged in to be able to see this page, to be able to visit it. Because right now, even if we're logged out, we can visit it. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to make sure that the user is logged in. If they are, then great. If they aren't, then we are going to redirect them. So how do we set that up? Well, on the back end, we need to go to the back end first. We need to create a route that's going to allow us to check to see if the user is logged in. Okay, so we're just going to use the status route. And what I'll do is if you want to check to see if the user is logged in, you can simply just do if rec.user, because if the user is not logged in, this object will be undefined. Rec.user, right? User object will be undefined. Not the request object, but the actual user object that's inside the request object. So if rec.user is good, we will just simply say, hey, look, let's send the user to the front end. Okay. Otherwise, what we'll do is we'll just say res.send status 403, and I can actually make this a ternary operator just to make it look cleaner. So effect.user is truthy, we'll send the user. Otherwise, we will send a 403, which basically means forbidden. Or actually, I think I'll do 401. 401 usually means unauthorized, and 403 is forbidden. Okay, so 401 typically means that they haven't logged in. 403 means that they are logged in, but they don't have permissions or they don't have access to this specific route. Okay, so if I try to visit port 3001, and it's going to say that I'm logged in, that's fine. Okay, but if I go ahead and let me clear the cookie, if I refresh, it says unauthorized, and you can see right over here, we don't have the cookie anymore. Okay, so we would need to relog in again. Okay, so on the front end, what we're going to do is we're going to use Axios to hit this endpoint, and based off of what it returns, if it returns a 200, then that means we're authorized. If it returns a 403 or 401, sorry, that means we're unauthorized, and we need to redirect the user to the login page. So that's going to be fairly easy to do. To do this, we're going to use the react.useEffect hook, the useEffect hook. Okay, so this is going to allow us to basically, it's very similar to the component on mount hook or lifecycle hook with class-based components. So basically, whenever the component has been rendered, it's going to invoke this useEffect, the useEffect hook. And what we want to do is we want to make a HTTP GET request. I'm going to create a new folder. I'll call this utils for utilities, and I'll just create a file called api.js. Okay, did I create a folder by accident? Whoops. And I'm going to go ahead and import Axios from Axios. And we'll just do export const get user get auth status. And what we're going to do is we're simply just going to make an axios.get, and we're going to need to pass in the URL, so http localhost 4001 /api/auth/status, and you want to make sure you pass in the config, and you want to make sure you pass in the with credentials. Basically, this will send the cookie. This will send the cookie to the backend. If you set this to false, or if you don't even provide this option, it will not send a cookie, which is why you will get some kind of unauthorized error. Okay, so make sure you send the actual cookie by setting with credentials to true. I'm going to place this inside an object because we're going to be using this a lot. So might as well just place it once so we don't have to keep on, defining over and over again. Okay, so right now I am not logged in. That's okay. We can go ahead and log in. What's going on? Oh. So let's log in. Okay. And what we'll do is right over here, react.useEffect. We're going to go ahead and call get auth status. And this returns a promise. So we will go ahead and call that then. And this is going to return the Axios response. So we can actually destructure it. We can get the data object. So that's whatever the server responds with. And we'll console log data. And we'll console log any errors. And let's see what happens. So I'm going to refresh. And if I look at the console, you're going to see that we have a CORS error. Okay. Now, when you see the CORS error, this is basically blocking the request because we are on a different domain. So there's a whole bunch of specifications on what defines a different domain. We're on a different port, even though we're on localhost, but we're on a different port. That itself alone causes the CORS error. If you're working in production and if you're on the same host name, it should be fine. I've never had CORS issues on the production server, only when it came to localhost, or if I was using like a different domain. Okay, but this is a very simple fix. Just go back to your backend, and we want to install CORS. So let's go ahead and do that, just do it right over here. I have so many windows open. npm install cores. Okay, and just simply import that const cores equals require cores, and you want to make sure you register the cores somewhere before all of your routes before the session. So we'll do it right over here. Use cores, and you can specify the origin, which is the domain. So we'll do localhost 3000. And since we have authentication, we want to also make sure we take in the credentials as well. And I'll just write a comment, register cores. Okay. Yeah, so let's try this again. And you're going to see that if you've struggled with cores in the past, you're going to see how easy it is to fix it. Okay, granted that we're on the same domain, but now let's refresh. And now you can see we have our details. Okay, we have all of our details. Very simple. All right, so that's pretty much it when it comes to fetching the data from the front end. Now let's go back to the front end again. And we're going to keep going between the back and the front end. That's pretty much, you know, what full stack developers go through all the time. They have to switch between the front and the back end all the time. It's normal. But what we want to do now is we want to redirect the user. So I think to do that with React Router, there should be a redirect. Let's see. Oh wait, we can actually use history, the history object. Okay, so let me go ahead and pass in the props for payment page, and let me just console log just to make sure it's there. Yep, history. Okay, so with React Router DOM, it actually passes in the history prop for all of your routes. Okay, so you can see that we have the router, we have switch routes, etc. So we can use the history prop to pretty much just forward the user back to the page that we want. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just simply destructure history. And the history object itself has a method called history. I think it's push. And we'll push it back to login. Okay. And let's go ahead and refresh. So right now we are logged in, so that's fine. Let's just clear the cookie. And if I refresh right now, you're going to see that it's going to take me back to the login page. All right, let's try it again. Let's go to payment. It's going to take me back to the login page. So that's how you can protect your route on the front end. Okay, if you want to protect on the back end, you do what I did right over here. You can write this function. You can actually put this inside a separate function and register as a middleware. So you don't have to keep on checking this over and over again. The middleware function will always check it before it reaches the final callback function, the request handler. Okay, but that's how you can protect your pages. Now, one more thing to fine tune this is we should also use a state variable to tell when the page has stopped making the request. So for example, we're going to create a state variable called loading and the setter loading, which is a function to update the state variable. And we're using the use state hook. So by default, when we first visit the page, of course, loading is going to be true because we are fetching data. Okay, so when do we stop fetching data? Well, when we get a response back from the server. So when we get the response back from the server, the promise is going to be resolved from .then, and then we can set loading to false. Okay, same thing over here. When the error happens, we can set loading to false. Okay, and from here, let's do one more thing. Let me go ahead and do this. So this is a good way to make sure that the page doesn't fully load the content until everything has been loaded, until all of the responses came back from the server. So let me do this. Return if not loading. Let's go and return the payment page. Or we're going to return an h1 called loading. So right now, if I try to visit payment, you're going to see that it's going to redirect us. Let's log in. Okay, so you can see that this is loading. Okay, if we want, we can also set timeout to kind of delay this for like 3 seconds. There we go. So obviously you can put like a spinner, but that's just one way they can do it. Okay, so hopefully that part makes sense. All right, and that's pretty much it. So we're pretty much good to go with the front end. We've protected the payment page. Okay, the next thing that we're gonna do is we're going to create a couple of products, or we're gonna create a couple of boxes where the user can click on, and it's basically going to allow them to make a payment stuff. So this is where we can actually start working on the Stripe stuff. So we can add the card, we can make the payment, and etc. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into that. Okay, so for Stripe, we're going to need to use Stripe elements to build out our form. So Stripe elements comes with the form that allows us to send payment to the Stripe API. It's very easy to use. So we're going to go ahead and install Stripe. So I'm just going to go ahead and install it on the front end. So I'm in my Stripe front end directory, and I'm going to do yarn add, and the package is called @stripe, stripe-js. All right, cool. So now we can follow the instructions that they give us over here. So we're going to want to load Stripe. So let's go ahead and do that. So we want to load Stripe. So we're going to go over to, let's go to app, or not app, index. Okay. I just realized I think I should have actually put the routing stuff inside app. I realized I shouldn't have done it in index.js. I mean, I guess it's okay, but typically you just wrap the app and then you'd put it. But you know what? Let me actually fix that. I shouldn't have put in a router. I should have put in app. Let me just fix that real quickly, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, and then we can go over here, and then we can import app. Yeah, sorry about that. So just make sure you get rid of all of that routing stuff and place it inside app.js, and then render the app. So it should work the same way. Let me just double check. Yep, perfect. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're going to import load Stripe from stripe.js. You can see we have the function over here, and we need to go ahead and load it. So we're going to call Stripe, load Stripe. So this is where we need to pass in our publishable key. Remember, that's the public key. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to our account on Stripe, and we're going to go over to, let's do developers, and we're going to click on API keys. So now you see the publishable key. Okay, remember, this is the test key. So you can build out your application. Once you're done, you can switch to live mode, and it'll work the same exact way. So let's copy this, and let's just paste this right over here for now. It doesn't really matter because we aren't really going to deploy this. Typically, I'd put this in an environment variable, but we can leave it here for now. And what we want to do is we want to load the elements. Okay, so the way they do it here is, you can actually look at the documentation too. Let me see if, yeah. So you can see right over here that they have this elements component. Okay, and we need to also install React Stripe.js because we're using React. So yarn add, what was it, the package? It's @stripe, React Stripe.js. Okay, there we go. So we're just simply going to do imports from @stripe React.js, and then we can import this elements. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to wrap the component that we're going to be using elements with. Okay, so this is going to allow us to use the hook, such as use elements and use Stripe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap elements around the payment page, and we're going to pass in the prop. There's a prop that we need to pass in. I think it's Stripe. Yep, pass in Stripe. And that should be good to go. We should be good to go for that. You can see it does the same thing right over here, load Stripe. You pass it over here. And we're not going to need the Stripe elements in our entire app. You only really need it in areas that actually needs the Stripe form to be loaded. Okay, but now if we go to payments page, if I want, I can build out the page right now. So I'll just do that. So let's do payment, and we can start bringing in the Stripe forms. Okay, so to do that, we're just going to import card element, use elements, and use Stripe from React Stripe JS. So I'm going to go ahead and do card element. And now you're going to see that we have the card form over here. Now, if you're using an ad blocker, you might get some issues with the ad blocker blocking it. It should be okay though. Let me go ahead and wrap this inside the form. Okay. And what we're going to do is, well, we can actually look at the documentation and kind of like follow along with what they're doing. But basically, you can see that we can pass in a bunch of different things. We can pass in an ID. We can pass in options. Let's see the options. The options are for styling it. So you can actually change the styling of... What's going on over here? You can change the styling of the card. Okay. But that's pretty much it for that, though. Okay, we're going to add a button, too. So I'll just add a button. Submit. Okay, so card elements. So obviously not gonna do anything right now, but we're gonna work on that. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to use the two hooks. Okay, there's two hooks that we need to use. It's Stripe, use Stripe, and use elements. Okay, so this basically allows us to actually communicate with the actual Stripe APIs. So we need to use those hooks. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put everything inside a component. I'm going to call this Stripe form.jsx. And let me just move this to the other side. And I'll just copy this part and export const Stripe form. And over here, we're going to basically place our form and everything. So we're going to get rid of all of this from the payment page. We're going to place this over here. Whoops. And we'll just render the Stripe form. And we need to import that. I'll create a barrel file for this component. So following the same pattern that we did with payments, or pages, sorry. So export from Stripe form. And we need to import it. So that will be imported from components. Okay. And if we go back here, it should be there. Okay. So let's go ahead and use the hooks. So const elements or const stripe equals use stripe. Const elements equals use elements. And we'll also worry about errors too. So const error set error. And then I think that'll be react.use states. Okay, because there's currently no errors right now. And basically what we want to do is when we click on this button, we want to handle that submit. So I think what I'll do is on submit, we'll create a function called handle submit right over here. And we'll need to take in the event object so that we can prevent default, because otherwise it's going to keep refreshing the page. So if I go ahead and refresh, if I click submit, you can see that doesn't refresh the page anymore. If I get rid of that, it's going to keep refreshing the page, which is not good. We want to stay on the same page. Okay? All right, so now what we're going to do is we'll just follow the documentation because they have a pretty good example already. So we'll just kind of like just follow that. So we're going to add an on change to handle the change to check to see if there's any real-time validation or if they enter like a wrong card. So for example, on change, handle change. So what's going to happen is as we're entering data into the form, it's going to invoke this callback function. And if there's any errors, it's going to set the error. And then we can display the error to the user. So let's say, for example, error, we can do something like div error. Otherwise, we'll render null. So let's see. So if I try to submit, nothing's gonna happen. If I try to submit a incorrect card, you can see that says your card is invalid. Okay, so that's good. Okay, like I said, that's just from the Stripe documentation. Okay, so what we want to do though is whenever we submit the form, let's say we enter a valid card, what we want to do is we want to get the card, and it says over here that it's creating a token. Like I said, there's many ways that you can actually accept payment. What we're going to do is we're actually going to create a payment method, and then we're going to create that payment method. It's going to call the Stripe API. That Stripe API is going to then come back and it's going to give us a payment method ID. And we're going to call the server to attach that payment method ID to the customer. And then we can start subscribing the user. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go over to handle submit. So let's get the card. And to do that, we'll do elements.getElement. And we want to pass in card element like that. And what we're going to do is we're going to do const result equals stripe.create payment method. Okay, I don't think there's a method that you can do for subscribe. So we have to do create payment method. And we're going to pass in the card. That's where we're going to get the payment data. Let me collapse this real quick because it's right over there. Okay, so we're going to pass in the card. Okay, and we do need to make this an async function. And I'll show you what happens on Stripe's end. So let's do this. If result.error, okay, we'll set error result.error.message. And again, I'm just copying the code. So, but it's pretty straightforward. All right, let's see what the payment method value is. So there's actually two values. There's payment method and there's error. I'm just gonna destructure it actually. I think it'll be a lot better. Okay, so this should succeed. So let's refresh. So if I try to type in an invalid number, it's not gonna work. Let me open up the dev tools as well. Okay. So if I try to submit anything, it's not going to work. Why is this thing? Oh, there we go. Okay, so if I try to enter this, it's not going to work. Okay, so I just realized that instead of passing the card element, we actually need to pass in a string. Completely forgot about that. All right, so now for the parameter, we need to pass in an object, and we're going to pass in card. And then for type, it's going to be a card. And that should fix that error. There you go. So now you can see that we have the payment ID. Okay, we have the billing details of the card. We have everything that we need. Okay, obviously these are all null values because we haven't actually done anything with it. If we go over to, let's do payments, you can see that, or not payments, there should be a place where we can see all of the cards. I'm not sure where we would need to go for that. Home. Okay, well that's okay. That's okay. I think, did it do it by default? No, that was something that we added earlier. We didn't add that just now. And that's a different, I think, expiration date. Yep. Okay, so what we need to do with this payment method is we need to actually send this payment method ID to our API. And then on the API, we're going to need to create the payment method by attaching it to the customer. Okay, and then we are going to get a response back and we'll send a message to the user. All right, so before we continue, I do need to fix one issue. So right now I'm getting this issue where history.push is undefined, and I think I figured it out. Basically, the history prop is not being passed in down from app. I don't know why, because we have everything over here. So I'm not sure exactly why it's not being passed down. I feel like maybe I could probably pass it down here or something. I don't know. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this, all this, and I'm going to go back and just go back to what I had before. And instead of loading Stripe inside the app.js, what I'll do instead is I will load it in payment page. So I'll load it right over here. It's elements Stripe. Okay, and I think that should be fine. So if I try to go to payment, it's not gonna work. Now it'll work. Okay, so I just wanted to fix that real quick because it was giving me a quick issue. But yeah, that's all we are going to be changing for now. Okay, so now we can actually go onto the backend and we can actually use the API key for the backend to start making requests to Stripe. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and work on the backend part to start making requests to Stripe. We're going to get the secret key. So this is the one that you need to keep private on your server. The publishable key can actually be placed on the front end, but the secret key needs to be on the back end. So what you want to do is you want to click reveal test key. And in case if this gets revealed, you can always roll the key. So it'll generate a new one for you. So I'm going to copy this key. And you want to go to your backend code. So let me just close all of this stuff out. This is all front-end stuff. Okay. And what we want to do is we want to install the Stripe library. So you're going to just simply type npm I Stripe or yarn add Stripe. It doesn't matter. And you also want to save your Stripe key somewhere. I'm going to save mine in an environment variable. So Stripe key. There you go. And now we can go ahead and start using Stripe. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder. I'll call this utils for utilities, and I'll create a file called stripe.js. I'm going to go ahead and import Stripe. And we're going to just simply import the class, and we'll create an instance of it. And we're going to go ahead and pass in our Stripe key. For the config, we're going to need to pass in the API version, so we'll just pass in that one, which I think that's the only one they have right now, I think. All right, so we're going to basically create all of our helper functions inside this file over here. So the function that we need to create first is to create a customer. So for example, whenever we log in or whenever we create an account, we need to make sure when we create an account, we create the customer on Stripe. And we also save that data to our database. We haven't done that yet. Okay, all we have done so far was we just created the user. We haven't actually saved the customer at all. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and just create a function called const create Stripe customer. This is going to be an async function, and this is going to take in some data. And all this is going to do is we're just simply going to reference stripe.customers.create, and we're going to create by email. But actually, I forgot one thing. We actually need to check to see if the customer exists, because remember earlier when I showed you guys Stripe, the dashboard, Stripe will not actually validate to see if the customer exists based on email. Okay, so we need to do that ourselves. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pass in an email. I'm going to destructure that. And we're going to go ahead and do this const result equals await stripe.customers.list. And we want to find this based on the email. So we'll do that real quick. You can also find it based on other properties too. Like you can do it based on ID, or not ID, but I think name. And what's going to happen is we're going to go ahead and destructure this because it's going to return an array. Okay, so this is actually going to return an array of customers, because there could be, let's say, more than one customer with the same email. Okay, so we want to make sure that the array is not empty. If it's not empty, that means there's a customer that exists. If it is empty, then we're going to create that customer. Okay, so it's very simple. We're just going to use a ternary operator. So if data.length is equal to 0, so that means if the array is empty, we're going to create the customer by simply doing stripe.customers.create, pass in the email. You can pass in other things too, like the name, metadata, etc. Or we'll just return the customer that's already in Stripe. Okay, let's export this. Create Stripe customer. And let's go to our strategy file, and we're going to import that. But what we're going to do is we're going to need to create the customer. I'll actually create the customer first. So Stripe customer equals await, create Stripe customer. And we'll pass in the email just like that. And once that's done, we're going to go ahead and create the customer object right over here. And what I'll do is I will get the Stripe ID. Actually, I'll do this. I'll destructure the ID because that's all we really need. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that because we have ID already defined up there, so that's not going to be good. We'll just do Stripe customer.id, and I think that is the only thing that we'll need to save based off of our schema. Yep, that's fine. Because they're a new customer, so they're not going to have a subscription, or they're not going to have an actual subscribe date. So that's fine. Okay, so that should do the trick. Okay, so if they are found, that means they already have created a customer profile. If it's their first time logging in or if first time signing in, then we're going to create that customer for them. Okay, so that should be that should do the trick. So why don't we do this? Let's go ahead and let's try to sign in. So I'm going to make sure I drop my database so that I don't have any users. Let me run my app. Okay, just go back here. Okay, so I don't have any users in my database right now. We're going to go ahead and log in with Discord. Authorize. So we're there. And let me just go into my MongoDB database. Use Stripe app. Show tables. db.users.find. We should see the customer profile right there, and you can see we have the actual customer ID over there. Okay, and it has our email and everything. If we go over to the dashboard, you can see that our customers are over there, and that's good. Doesn't have a default source of payment, but we'll worry about that in just a sec. Okay, so we have the customer, which is good. All right, so now that we have created the customer, we can finally send the payment ID from the front to the back end. So right over here, we want to send that payment method, the ID, to the back end. So I'm going to go to the front end. Remember, we're in the front end right now. We're going to create a function called send payment method. It's going to take in the ID, and it's going to be an axios.post. And the route we're going to create right now, the route is going to be /payments/method/create. The second parameter is going to be the actual data. Actually, I'll take it as an object instead. And then we need to pass in the credentials. Okay, so right over, this is the front end. We're going to go over to Stripe form. We're going to go right over here. And we're going to go ahead and do send payments. Does not want to be imported. There we go. And we'll pass in the payment method rec.id, just like that. And what we'll do is we'll call .then, and we'll just log it to the console just so we can see the data. So if we do anything right now, it's not going to do anything on the back end because we haven't created this route yet. So let's go and do that. So let's go back to the back end, and I'm going to go to payments, and I'm going to just delete this route because I don't need it. We're going to create a post route. So since the route is already /API/methods, all we need to do, or not methods, /API/payments, we're just going to do /methods/create. I'm going to take in the function over here. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and simply do this. We're going to go ahead and get the ID from the request body. If the ID is not there, we're going to just send a 400. And if it's there, we're going to need to get the actual customer from the user object, okay? Because the way that the user is set up is it has the customer property. So we can easily just grab that if we want to. So I'm going to go ahead and just do const customer from rec.user. Now you're going to risk having this throw an error because we're not doing any null checking. But here's the thing, the user will be defined if the user's logged in. So this is where you need to make sure that you protect your routes by checking to see if the user is authorized. Okay, so I'm just going to do this. If rec.user, then we'll do this. Else return res.send status 401, they're not authorized. But I would suggest writing a middleware function so that way you don't have to keep doing this over and over again. Okay, so let's do this. So const customer, we want to get the Stripe ID. So what we're going to do is we're going to attach the payment method now. Okay, so we have the customer, we have the payment ID. Let's go back here. Let's create a function called attach payment method. And this is going to take in some parameters. It's going to take in 2 parameters. We'll pass it in, we'll pass an object and we'll destructure it. So we'll need the customer ID and we'll need the payment method ID as well. And we're going to go ahead and just do this. Return. I think maybe I could just do this. Stripe dot payment methods dot attach. So we'll pass in the ID first, and then for the customer, pass in like that. So that should do the trick. That'll attach the payment method to our customer and making it the default one. Okay. Without the default payment method, they won't be able to be charged for subscription. So that's very important. So now we just need to call this method. So we'll do const result equals await attach payment method. Let's pass it in as an object. So we'll need the customer customer.stripe ID, and then we'll need the payment method ID like that. Okay, and that should be it. You know what? I'll just do this. I'll do this. Actually, never mind. I'll leave it like that. I'll leave it like that. That's fine. Okay. So let's go ahead and return res.send results. Send it to the front end for now. Okay, you don't want to send everything to the front end, obviously. You can just send like a 200. But I'll console log it just so we can see what is actually returned, because we still need to save some of the data to the database, if we need to, that is. Okay, so what's going on over here? We have an error. Oh, async. Here we go. Okay, so let's go back to payment. Okay, so let's go ahead and add our card. Okay, so if we go to our customer, you can see that we don't have a payment method. So let's just submit this. And hopefully something happens. APIs/payments/methods/create is not found. interesting. Let's see what's going on. Let's see, localhost, port 3001, payments, methods. Oh, it's methods. Okay, there we go. Silly mistake. Okay, we got an okay, perfect. Now we look over here, you can see we have all the data. Okay, I don't think you necessarily need to save any of these things, but you guys can go through it. But we already have everything saved on Stripe, so that's good to go. The only thing that you really need to save is the customer ID as well as the Stripe ID, or not the Stripe ID, the customer ID and the subscription ID. That's really it. Okay, now if we go over here, you can see that this is our payment method. And there we go. So now, if we want to create a charge, we can, because we have a payment method. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and set up the subscriptions part. So remember, we want to go and allow the user to purchase this product. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show you guys really quickly how to kind of do this from the backend. So we're going to use Postman, but I'm just going to hard code it just so you guys can see how it works. And then I'm going to show you guys how to do it from the front end. Okay, so on the back end, we're going to go ahead and do const create subscription. And this is going to need to take in a couple of parameters. So Stripe subscriptions, and then we can create one. So what we're going to need is we need the price ID. So items is going to be an array of objects, because you can subscribe to, or you can purchase multiple different things. So we're gonna need the price ID. So I'll get that right over here. So that's at the product. So I'm gonna hard code it just for now, don't worry. And what I'm gonna do next is we need the customer that this item is for. So for the customer, I'm going to hard code that as well. And then I'll show you how to actually do it from the front end. Okay, so I will go ahead and just do this. Const response equals await. Response. Okay, I'm going to just call this method right over here. I'll call it up here, create subscription. Okay. What's going on? I did attach the payment. Wait, what's going on? So it's complaining saying that it's not a default one, but I'm pretty sure I did attach. I did attach it though. Okay, so in the backend, I think what we're gonna do actually is, so the original method that I was trying to do seemed to have not worked, where when we actually called this attach function, I thought before it would actually attach it by default, but maybe I'm wrong. So I think what we're gonna do instead is we're gonna go ahead and save the default payment. There should be a way with Stripe on how you can set the default payments, but I'm not sure how to do that right now. But it's okay, because what we're going to do is we're going to just save it to the database. So what we're going to do is we'll do this. Let's go over here. And so we've already attached the payment method already, and we know for a fact that works. It calls Stripe and it sends the payment method, okay? We're gonna save it to the database. So what I want you guys to do is go over to user, and I want you guys to add a default payment ID for the customer schema. Okay, it's very simple. And right over here, we're gonna go ahead and update the user. So you wanna make sure you import the user model. And we're going to go and do const update equals await user, find one, and update. We're going to find by the email. And we're going to update a nested object, okay? So we have to use the set operator. and we're going to reference customer.default payment ID, and then we're going to set that to result.id. Now, when we want to create the actual subscription, we're just going to fetch the database and get the default payment ID and then pass it in. So right over here, there should be a method that you can pass in, which is a string. Okay, so that should be fine. Okay, so go ahead and make sure you drop your schema in case you haven't already, or just delete the user from the table because it might not add it, or it might not even update it. I'm not sure, but if you're getting issues with it being added, try dropping it. That's what I did. So we're going to go ahead and try this right now. So let me do this. Let me add a third object, set new to true, and then I'll actually just send update to the front end. Okay, let's open up the console. So right now on my dashboard, I have 0 payment methods. Okay, no payment methods. I'm going to go ahead and submit. And it's saying unauthorized. Oh, that's because we're not authorized. Yeah, that's fine. Let me just make sure nothing happened. Okay, good. Let's refresh the page. We need to log in. All right, so let's just log in. All right, now let's just attach the payment method. Okay, and before I do anything else, okay, there we go. So let's click submit. Okay, so now we have our customer, and you can see it has the default payment ID. Okay, and yeah, so on Stripe, I'm not sure if there's a way where you can just instantly set it to default when you attach it. But I guess the customer can have multiple payment methods, and what you can do is you can list all of them, and you can allow them to update which default payment method they want to use. Okay, but now let's go ahead and create the actual subscription. So I had an issue earlier when I was trying to create it, but I just want to show you how this is going to work. So I have this function over here called create subscription, and you can see all we're doing is we are creating one. So we're passing in the items, which is an array, and this takes in an object of all of the products that we want to subscribe to. So to get the products, well, we need to get the price ID, that is. So you go over to products, make sure you create a product first, and you want to copy the price ID. This is what we need to actually make the payment. Or this price ID allows Stripe to know which product to subscribe to. We need the customer ID. Okay, now I'm going to show you something real quick. I'm going to show you what happens if we try to call this function. So I'm going to import that in app.js. I'm going to save it, and you're going to see an error is going to be thrown because it says this customer has no attached payment or default payment method. So that's okay. What we're going to do, let's get rid of that. We're going to go ahead and fetch the user. We're going to fetch the database. And again, I'm going to hard code this right now, but I'm going to do it from the front end to the back, and I'm going to show you guys how it's done, okay? So let's just fetch the user. So const user equals 08, user, find one, email, and the email is, actually, you know what, let me use my Discord tag, Discord ID. That should be ID. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and do this default payment method. And this should work, user.get customer.stripe ID. And I'll console log it just to be safe. All right, so now I'm going to go back here or here. And let me go into the logs I'm going to save. Oh, wait, hold on. Did I use the wrong one? Did I do Stripe ID? I meant default payment method. What's going on? Oh, that's the console log. Whoops. Wait, hold on. It's saying undefined for me. Give me 1 second. Oh, default payment ID. Okay, there we go. So if I save, you can see that we have the payment method. That's okay. So let's just copy this. Let's paste that in there. let's save, and it should have created, yep, there we go. It created the subscription for us. Awesome. We can see about the URL, customer ID, everything. And it gives us the subscription ID too. If we look at the dashboard for Stripe, you can see that for this customer, they have this active subscription. Okay. So that works. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you how we can do this from the backend. So I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of this over here. So once we have attached the payment to the user, we're going to save it to the database. And what we can do on the front end is say, hey, look, if the user has a subscription, then we're going to allow them to subscribe to these products. If they don't, I'm sorry, not subscription, a payment method. If they have one, then we can allow them to subscribe to it. If they don't, then what we can do is we can just have them attach one, and then we can save it to the database, and next time they subscribe, we'll just use whatever is saved in the database. Okay, there are many ways you can go about this. It's really up to you. Stripe is a very, very large library, so I encourage you guys to try other things out yourself and read through the documentation. Okay, but what we need is we need to send these price IDs to the front end, so that way they know which one to click. Okay, so I mean, you can do a couple ways. You can either hard code the price IDs on the front end, which is what I'm going to do actually. There's a couple ways you can do this, but just for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to hard code it. What you could do is you can fetch it from Stripe and you can send it to the front end. But I'm going to go ahead and just do this. So I'm going to go and get rid of this. And I'll just comment all of this stuff out because we'll need it later. Let's go over to the front end now. And we're going to go ahead and add some buttons where they can click on to subscribe to the premium services. So I'm going to go ahead and create a component. I'll just call this products.jsx. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and import React from React. Export const products. Oh, I should have made this a products page. Yeah, let me do that real quick. Okay, enter div, and what we'll do here is we will just simply create two buttons. So button subscribe to tier 1 for $4.99. Like I said, you would have to, if you want to make this as dynamic as possible, you would have to fetch the data from the backend. But because we have been working on this for so long, I'm just going to speed up a little bit. So I'm going to just do tier 1. Do this $4.99 a month, and then $4.99 a year. So tier 1 price ID. Hold on, wait. Let me do this. Price IDs tier 1. We're gonna go get the product ID right now, or the price ID. Sorry. So this is the monthly one. And then yearly. Okay, and what we're gonna do is if we click on this right over here, let's just do handle subscribe monthly, and then we're gonna create the function, and we'll create a duplicate one for yearly. That'll be for this one. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to make an API call to, we'll do router.post. Let's do, so this is going to be /API/payments. Actually, we should probably create a new subscription route, but you know what? We don't have much time left, so I'm just going to just do this /subscriptions. Actually, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a new route, and I'll just call this subscriptions. And I'm just going to go ahead and just copy and paste some of the default stuff because I'm kind of trying to rush this a little bit because we've been doing this for so long, but it's okay. let's go ahead and do const subscription routes. Users require subscriptions. So now we'll register this route under the subscriptions URL. That'll work. So we're going to go and do router.post. So this is going to be subscriptions, and we'll do /subscriptions. And let's see, /subscriptions / create, I guess. Create a subscription, yep. For the request body, the only thing that we'll need is the price ID. So const price ID. Body. And like I said, you can also check to see if the user is authenticated. But like I said, you guys should know how to do that already, so I'll let you guys do that. So price ID is equal to, or not price ID, recta body is going to be, we're going to destructure it. I'm actually do price ID like this. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and basically call this create subscription function right over here. Okay. So we're going to need a couple parameters. We're going to need the customer ID. We're going to need the default payment ID, and we're going to need the price ID. So we already have the price ID. We know what the customer is, and we have the default payment. We can go ahead and proceed. So the best thing we could do is we can just do this. Create subscription. Whoops. Subscription. Doesn't want auto import. Huh. That's annoying. Sometimes I hate how Visual Studio Code does that. It just doesn't want to auto import. It's the most obnoxious thing ever. It's whatever. Okay, we're gonna pass in the customer. Well, I'll pass in as an object. Customer. What else? What else? Payment ID. Payment rec.user to customer default payment ID. And there's the price ID. Okay. Const response. So await. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to uncomment this out. We're going to take in the customer payment price. So for price, leave that. For customer, leave it like that because that's the customer ID. And then for default payment method, we will just do payment. Okay. I'm not sure why I did the user.get. Oh, I did the user.get because we didn't have access to the request object, but because we do here, we don't need to find the user in the database. Okay. So now that we have response, we can go ahead and just send it to the front end so we can take a look at it. And now let's go back to the front end. So when we click on this, we're going to need to make an HTTP request to, let's see, to our endpoint. So create subscription, and we'll pass in the price ID. How is it handled on the back end? It was price ID. Okay, perfect. We'll actually pass an object. So axios.post, and then HTTP localhost port 3001 API /subscriptions /create data, and then credentials. There we go. So when we click on this button, all we need to do is just say, hey, look, create subscription, pass in the data. So it's going to be the price ID. So price ID is going to be price IDs.monthly. Okay. And then we'll do this for yearly. And we'll do this for yearly. And let's just do this. Let's do this async. Let's just add some a nice loading effect, I guess. Const fetching set fetching react.useState false. Okay. And then what we'll do is we'll say, hey, look, const response or const data equals create subscription. We'll have to await this because it's a promise. As soon as this function is called, we will set fetching to true. Once it's done, we will set fetching to false. Okay, and then we'll console log the data. And we'll do the same thing over here. So let's do yearly over here. All right, so now if it's fetching, so we'll do if it's fetching, we will just say subscribing. Otherwise, we will just say null. And then we'll disable the buttons if it is fetching, so we can't make any request while it is currently processing the current one. So let's try it out. I know it's a lot, but we're almost there. We're almost there. We have a products page that we need to actually include in the route. So let's do that. So route exact equals true. Path products. And obviously you'd want to make sure you authorize this page by doing the same thing that I showed you with the payment page, where you have this react.useEffect, and then you would navigate them if they are not authorized. But let's just test this out because we are running out of time. Okay, so let's open up the console. I misspelled subscribing. Subscribing. Should be subscribing. Subscribing. Well, I wonder what's going on. Did I not send the oh, I have an error on the back end. Whoops. What's going on here? So we have payments. We have subscriptions. Yeah, it's just a silly error. Just fix that. Okay, let's refresh. Did that do anything? So I think it did create the subscription, but why did it not send anything? Oh, we're not returning anything, that's why. Silly me. Silly. Alright, there we go. Let's return. But if we look over here, if I refresh, you'll see we have our subscriptions. So let's go ahead and subscribe again. There we go. We have all of the data, and like I said, you would want to be responsible for saving all of these things to a database, okay? But there you go. So now we have our subscriptions, and that's pretty much it for this whole Stripe integration. I would not say that this is not the best way to do it, but this is one of many ways that you can do it, right? There are many different ways that you can integrate Stripe to your payment. And personally, I think this is definitely a good way to do it. Is it the best way? Not really. There's always things that you can improve on. But I think this is a decent way to do it. Obviously, there's other things that we need to fine-tune as well. For example, if the user is already subscribed, you shouldn't allow them to subscribe again, unless you want to just charge them for no reason. Well, you shouldn't allow it to happen. Just for a good user experience, you should also allow them to change default payments. So you can probably create a page that shows all their payments and etc. Alright, so that's going to be pretty much it for this whole video. I really hope you guys enjoyed this 3-part series. I will actually be continuing this. I still feel like there's a lot of things that I would like to show you guys how to do, such as checking to see if the subscription is valid, and if it is, we're going to grant them access to the application. So as I said earlier in this series that I was going to build out some kind of a project. So what I'm going to do in the next couple of videos is I'm going to spend some time to build out the mini app, and I'm going to show you how we can interact with Stripe and our database to ensure that the user actually has a valid subscription. And if they do, then they can, for example, access a certain page, they can use a certain Discord bot command, they can use certain features, and etc. So I really hope you guys enjoyed the last 3 videos. We have a lot more videos to cover on Stripe. So don't worry, if you guys want more of these, let me know down in the comments. Leave a like, leave a comment down below, because that helps me understand what kind of content my viewers enjoy watching. So that's going to be it for now, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.